Most business owners want to wear every single hat, and they find out that they need the team around them. This is the Founders Table. I'm Stefan Bunch with
Drew Sanford.
And we have a very special guest with us today. Drew, give us a little intro.
Man, so Adam Sterling is our guest today. He's a CPA. He's gone to Drew University, played golf, done a whole bunch of cool things, and he's worked with dozens, if not hundreds, of business owners over the years. And he's a great tool and a resource. And we wanted to bring him on today to talk about advice for somebody starting a business or involved in a business. And, we get in these stages where we're running and we're doing this. We're the HR director, we're the business owner, we're the sales guy, we're the CPA, we're the lawyer. And at some point you have to know as a business owner, like, I can't do it all. Yep. And when do you make that leap? And when do you cross that threshold to say, look, I'm going to invest in a good CPA. I'm going to make sure we have a good lawyer on retainer. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and starting to split and break up everything that you do and start delegating it. We're going to talk about when you cross that bridge, and we're going to talk accounting and CPAing and booking and golf.
It's going to be riveting.
I like it, guys. Well, thanks for having me on. I think we can go down whatever rabbit hole you guys want to go down, and go from there. I've been doing this, been a CPA 7 years. I've actually worked with Drew's dad, David Sanford, for 11 years or so now. So it's been a hot minute. Yeah. And excited to do it.
Adam, were you around the Springfield area growing up?
Yeah, I was. I've born and raised. I think I've lived in a 5 square mile radius my whole life. So, pretty exciting in that regard.
Really gets out there.
Yeah, really gets out there.
Adam, your dad's done construction. Is that right?
Yeah, he used to be, he's retired now. He was an electrical contractor. And so he did that for 30, for almost 40 years. Yeah, something like that. So that's where I grew up at. And I thought I was even going to do that after college for a little bit. And then I decided, you know what, maybe I'm more better equipped for a desk job. So that's how I ended up as CPA.
The interesting part, though, it's like I look at my dad and it's like I grew up, talking to business owners and being around business owners and watching him consult and talk to people and do that. And now you've kind of stepped into that role. And I know, my dad's firm, you guys have a ton of construction people. And I think that goes back to your history, too. You understand it the inside and out because you grew up hearing it.
Yeah. I think there's truth in that. And, small businesses are in some ways all created alike, but construction and the trades are definitely a particular niche, and we do a lot of them. And so we kind of lean into that, trying to help those kind of folks.
Yeah. Adam, we were even just at the beginning of this, we were talking about how when you're starting a business, you have so many different responsibilities right off the bat, and you don't always have the money or funds to just immediately outsource all those things. As you're starting to grow and build the business, it's really important to have the right people around you. Even in conversations before this, you were talking about with a lot of business owners, they come up right to April 15th and they have no idea where they stand as a business. Mm-hmm. And so we really wanted to have you on to talk through the accounting side, the CPA side in this world. As somebody in real estate or plumbing or in construction, they're not equipped to really support that area of their business well. And so we believe it's somebody that you should have one of your first teammates that is working with you, walking alongside you in your business, is somebody that knows the numbers well. Because at the end of the day, that's what the whole business is about. Yeah. And so if you do not have that mastered, you can get in trouble really quickly, especially with the IRS.
Right. I think a lot of business owners, accounting becomes an afterthought. And I get that, especially new business owners, because you're just kind of making sure, hey, is there money in the bank to pay this week's bills?
I just want to survive.
Yeah, I want to survive. Paying somebody to review the numbers beyond the absolute minimum, because at some point we all have to file taxes. At least in theory, we have to file taxes.
We're going to ask you questions like, how long can you get away with that?
Yeah, how long does that last?
It's crazy. And so, it's kind of like one of those things is afterthought for people, but there's value in it. And we work with all shapes, sizes, scopes of businesses. Some are just like single person LLC, just starting out. They they're trying to wear every hat in the business. And to a certain extent, they need to, because, maybe cash flow isn't good that yet, all the way up to business with their own accounting team and CFO. And mainly we file the taxes because they give us good numbers, and they've grown to that point where they can do that. And then everything in between. So, we can.
And I will say, just to jump in, a lot of those clients, and the firm you guys have grown them to that stage.
Right. A lot of times it's not that they came in at that level. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that, they might have started out small. Maybe it was just even like a husband and wife deal. The wife was kind of like, I hate to stereotype, but, sometimes keeping the books or something like that. Mm-hmm. And, somebody was growing the business. Somebody was doing the office admin type stuff and keeping the books. And we were kind of there to help support that process, because not everybody's an accountant. Yeah. A lot of people can, do a little bit of QuickBooks and kind of try to get everything in the right place. And that can help, lower their fees and that kind of thing. They're doing some of the grunt work themselves, but they really need somebody looking over their shoulder being like, okay, well, did you put that in the right spot? I mean, I even see clients, and hey, no fault to anybody who thinks you can do this, but it's like, if you pay down debt, the principal on that debt's not a tax deduction. They assume it is. They're like, I'm not making any money. I'm like, you can deduct the interest, but the principal on that debt is
still income.
That's not a deduction. You did make money and you do owe tax. That's just an example. But, they need somebody looking over their shoulder. Maybe it's monthly, quarterly, something basis. Yeah. So they understand that it's like, well, I didn't think I was making money, but actually, I guess I do, and I guess I owe tax, and that's like an unfortunate reality for them.
And then they get to the end of the year and they owe a bunch of money they don't have in the bank, because again, they paid off all their debt thinking they were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
What I've learned from being around this for so long, I've got an accounting degree from Alabama. I knew I didn't want to sit at a desk job. You know what I mean? Like I have ADD. Like that's not good for me. But hearing the conversations that my dad's had through the years and you've had through the years, different things like that, just as much as a tax professional. And I think that's what most people think, oh, my CPA is my tax man or tax lady that does all my stuff for me. I think that's a not good misconception, because I feel like what really ends up happening is you need people in your corner for business in general, right? One thing in life, like it's always good to have a mentor. It's good to have, a good relationship at church. It's good to have a small group. It's good to have people all around you to help bounce ideas off. What I think people overlook with accountants is they don't get a look at one or two businesses. They look at hundreds of businesses. I mean, you look at 1,000 businesses a year and how they do stuff. And when you see one client that says, man, I'm really struggling with X, and then you help them or talk to them about it, and then they get through it, and then somebody else has a question and they say, man, I'm really struggling with X. Well, you've already learned how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other businesses have made it through that or walked through that, negotiated through that to find success. Your accountant is not just somebody to crunch the numbers. Yeah. It's almost a business coach / counselor / be all person for you. And I know what I've seen from when you guys have clients that really, they do the monthly thing with you guys and they're in here, we see them in and out of the office all the time. And the ones that are here all the time, those typically are the people that are probably making the most money, because they're really engaged. When you're looking and if you can read a P&L and a balance sheet and you're keeping up with it, and then you're making business decisions based off facts and numbers, not just out of, I think this is what we should do, your business changes and it shifts. And I think as you want to scale and grow, you really can't scale and grow until you understand where the numbers are. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I've realized.
Right. And I think people have these misconceptions, because I'd say historically speaking, a lot of times, let's even rewind the clock back 20 or 30 years ago or more. It was in large part true that, like, okay, my CPA does my taxes. Maybe if I'm lucky, we do a little bit of tax planning in, like, say, October, November, December. And that's, that was that. Mm-hmm. We called it a day. And I think there's a lot more younger CPAs and firms, and your dad has been really proactive, Drew, throughout his life of trying to focus in a different direction, in the sense, oh yeah, we still have tax expertise and we do that, but we want fewer clients, but clients that we touch more often, in the sense that, yeah, we're trying to keep up with the books on a monthly basis, provide solid advice, provide tax planning. We can assess the pros and cons of, is it worth taking on that debt to maybe expand this area of the business or do something like that? And so, it's easy to have the conception of like, oh, well, my CPA just does taxes. Well, maybe yours does, but maybe that's not the right model for your business potentially. So you're really looking to find one, I think, that can be proactive, especially if you're a new entrepreneur or just getting started. You're trying to strike the balance too. It's like, well, obviously I can't afford like a CFO or something like that. Because like I don't have 6 figures plus to pay somebody. Yeah. Sometimes it's like I'd like to pay myself 6 figures plus. And that's,
exactly.
So that's not going to happen. But, maybe you can have a CPA who's willing to work with you, just like your business isn't big enough that you need somebody like that, but maybe you do need somebody to look at the books for an hour or two a month. And that's something that you can afford for, $500 a month. And, maybe you pay just a little bit more and it includes the tax return on a monthly schedule. That's something we try to do, is keep the billing even. Anyways, there's all sorts of things, but it's like, maybe I can get some of that expertise, but I'm paying somebody in public practice who I'm one of several clients, not just, I can't afford to have a full-time CPA, basically.
Yeah. And we talk about it all the time, even with businesses as they're talking through marketing. Like, you can try to put things together, get it out there the best you can, but at some point you need to have an expert in your corner that's working through those things. Or when it comes to, we talked to a lender, and it's really about the lender is the person coaching you in this process, showing you where you could be. You can go online and have some lender write you a pre-approval any day, but on a personal level, understanding where you are, what's most healthy for you and your situation, those are two completely different things. And I love that mentality. And Drew talks a lot about that, about how it seems like you guys you are truly wealth advisors. Like, you are talking and working with the business. Like you said, you see it over and over again. In real estate, we see transactions every single day. The people that we're working with, they don't see it every day. They see it once every 6-7 years, and things change, first of all. And second, we know some of those blind spots that are going to be coming, and we can address those early. The same is true for you guys, and we're super thankful for those conversations being had.
And I draw a parallel with real estate and accounting or a CPA practice. I think the similarity to me is, in real estate, you're the glue, right? Like, you have the home brokerage, lending officers, different brokerages, stuff like that come to you, and they explain everything that's going on. You have closing companies coming to you, teaching and training and giving us information. Then you have clients that you're able to take all that, glue it all together, teach them, and then help build them the best strategy with what's happening today.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing, I think, with a good CPA. And, I'm not here to promote you, Adam, is like, oh, you need to use Adam. But on the same token, you need to find a CPA that has a like kind to what you guys are doing, I think. Yeah. Because if you're going to go take a business loan out, you need to know what's the taxable reasons behind it. You have bankers come to you all the time that, some of a bank is not a bank, right? Like, some banks are very aggressive in certain niche industries because in banking, the banks have to loan in different business segments. So Adam probably knows if I'm a contractor or I'm a real estate agent or I'm an investor or I'm a whatever the business is, which bank is the most aggressive on the best rates, because it's not always the same. It's not like real estate where, you can go to everybody and they're all going to give you around within a tenth of each other based on your credit history. It's really based about the industry and where they need to grow. So you may have one bank that's at a 7%. You may have another bank that's super aggressive at a 4.5%.
Yeah, somebody in ag and land is going to have a different 100%. Banking situation.
So having a CPA that knows that is great. And just going out to your local bank and doing that may not be the best scenario on that. You have a resource that can do that, and then flop that to retirement. Well, if you're a business owner and here's, I'm going to go back to where I draw the line, there's survival mode. We all get that, right? Like, we all started businesses. We've all been in survival mode. Like, I just got to get where I can pay my bills. Yep. Well, at some point you're like, whew, I'm not going to say I made it, but bills are getting paid. I got some money in the bank. Life's good. When you're in that stage, you need to go get a CPA, and not just a tax accountant. You need to go get somebody that's in your corner that you can go consult with, be it quarterly, be it monthly. I would say monthly is best. If you can swing that, if you could find somebody, like you were saying, to be able to have a conversation a couple hours a month with somebody for $1,000 a month. Yeah, that's 12 grand a year, but you don't think you're going to save that money probably on the first year's taxes, at least an advice of errors that you're going to make as a business owner, not to mention if you need to buy anything, getting a better interest rate, there's 10x that.
On top of liability.
Right. Liability, you know what I mean? So it's like when you start, people always say the rich get richer. Well, that's one of their tricks is they get good people in their corner to do that stuff. And I think that's what, if you're watching our podcast, like that's what you got to understand. Like, you could be the best plumber. You could be the best real estate agent. You could be the best farmer in the world. That doesn't mean you're good at knowing all this other stuff. And you don't need to be. Like, I don't think you tell your clients, oh, you need to be the best at all this stuff. And if you don't know this, you're dumb. Like, that's not it at all. Like, I'm going to take this off your plate and I'm going to handle this for you. And we're going to have a great relationship. And you're going to tell me what you think. I'm going to tell you what I think. And you could take what information, you're the owner, you tell me how to do it at the end of the day. But stepping up to that, you're helping glue everything together to give them the information to make the best decisions they can so they can scale their business and get where they want to be.
Right. And I think, for small business owners, they start out real small and they don't really have a direction of where they're going. And it quickly like multiplies and kind of gets out of their wheelhouse, basically. Yep. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I need to hire a few more people. That's wonderful. And I hope you do. And you can continue to scale that way. But then when you start getting to decisions of like, well, I need to take on a little debt to grow further. And, that employee is pretty expensive, but, you need to figure out, can I really cash flow this just because I feel like I have money in the bank? And things are going well now, it doesn't mean that's forever. And so you really need to kind of educate yourself and not look at the books. Like a lot of times, and we have clients that, it's not our preferred relationship, but we have clients that they bring us their stuff in tax season. We have to try to make heads or tails of what kind of books they've given us, right, wrong, or indifferent. We try to help clean them up as best we can. And then we give them a tax bill potentially that they may or may not be prepared for. And so just like you said, Drew, assessing that early and often can really alleviate a lot of stress too from clients. And
I think a lot of stress as a business owner, if you're making money, there's some cash flow happening, stuff's going, and you go, oh, well, I'm really busy. I'm going to hire a salesman, or I'm going to hire 3 other service techs, or I'm going to hire this, that, or the other. If you don't have your books in order, you're just pissing in the wind. I mean, don't mean to say it like that, but it's just one of those things that like you're just taking guesses. And I don't know about you, when I run a business, I don't want to guess. I want to know that this is the right decision for my business, for my life, for my family, because at the end of the day, I don't want to take away from my family. I don't want to have to go manage a bunch of chaos and do things like that. So we've been talking through on some of our previous podcasts, just really systematizing things, building SOPs, at least even on a notepad, drawing out the hierarchy of the business, things like that. When you're to that stage and you're wanting to grow and scale, that is when you back to getting the CPA on your side, getting those books in order and getting those numbers in order. Even if you pay, let's say I came to you and said, look, I need to get my QuickBooks in order. I need a good rough training on what I'm going to do. You may go in and say, what's it cost? $2,500, $5,000. I'm going to get you set up. I'm going to get everything in order, whatever that looks like, really get you set up. Bring your wife and you in to learn. Bring your office staff in to learn. You can teach them a lot of the stuff, and then you could do a month at that point. Then you could do a monthly part and start saying like, okay, so we've learned what we need to do to try to minimize our cost on the regular, and then we can get good information from them to you. It's easier for you to put it together, so you don't charge as much to have a conversation with me to say, I want to go here, here, and here, because then you can come in as a business owner, and I could say, look, we're thinking about adding XYZ to our business. What do you think? Well, Mr. Bean Counter here, you could throw the numbers together and be like, well, this is what it costs you to do it. This is what it would cost for a new person. This is how much revenue we think you can make off that. If you can get the sales number you think, you could build projections. God forbid you build projections. And then what happens? You give it to the bank. If you need to buy equipment, you get a loan. You know what I mean? And that's how the whole game
for your business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
I would say I think there's a lot of business owners, they get started, books are not top of mind for them, and they're nervous, they're concerned. how am I going to bring this mess to my CPA?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, for me, this is a wild story, but when I left my house, we went to the dentist every 6 months, right?
Okay. Yeah.
When I went to college, I didn't go to dentist for 6 years.
Yeah.
And I always in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, what if something's going on with my teeth, whatever? And it made me more anxious to go to the dentist to see what was going on. Once I finally did, you get whatever problem you have and you fix it and you move on. But I feel like there's a lot of people that are like, I've got all these books. I have no idea how I've kept them. Who knows what the past is going to look like? How do you have that conversation with somebody?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good analogy. Actually,
that was a good one.
Yeah, because the longer you let it linger, it maybe isn't you don't even have that many problems, but it's just the unknown that makes hesitancy, right? And so the longer you let it linger, not knowing, at the very least, as you kind of alluded to, there's the potential for bigger problems, and you may be psyching yourself out over nothing.
And you can't lead a business without clarity. And at the end of the day, at least to its full potential. And so just like if I don't have that full confidence, then when a decision needs to be made, I can't be 100% if I really don't see what the future looks like and where we're at today. And so I think that's really, really key.
Right. No, I totally agree. I think getting that clarity around your business, understanding, I mean, we talk taxes, and that is a significant component, because that's kind of like the lowest common denominator is everybody needs their taxes done, right? And
what's the saying? There's two things guaranteed in life: death and taxes.
Exactly.
Both are no fun.
Exactly. And so that keeps most people at least coming in for, let's say, an annual check-in. Not everybody, but it keeps a lot of people coming in for an annual check-in. But even with that said, like that's, how do you feel when it's April, whatever, and I tell you owe $30,000 as a hypothetical? Could be more, could be less.
Be 300.
It
could be 600.
Yeah, if you've really got a business that's scaled up more, you got more income, hopefully more net profits, and could be a lot. And so,
and that's why I keep going back to what's the threshold for that, right? Like when does somebody need to do this? And I think it's so important that if you're scaling and you're doing stuff, you have to have somebody in your corner doing this, because if you get a surprise like that, not that it could be career ending, but like it's going to suck for sure. Yeah. And you're not doing a great job planning and being a leader if you're not at least.
Well, then we're talking about payment plans with the IRS, whatever Department of Revenue you're dealing with. And nobody wants that.
No.
Right? Then it's like, okay, well, we're going to accrue some penalty and interest on that too. You're going to have to pay it off over time. That's going to hit your cash flow, over a longer period. And it's a bad situation. I don't want to have to talk about it with clients. They don't want to have to talk about it.
They don't want to hear it.
Yeah. So it's less than ideal.
So when somebody is coming to you, maybe they've ran their business a few years and they've tried to do the books on their own, it's kind of a mess. What's the next step that you would say?
Yeah, that's a great question.
A conversation.
That's a great question. I mean, our step one is to see like, okay, let's just give me a balance sheet and a P&L. Maybe you have that. I hope, but maybe not, right? Mm-hmm. So give me something, or wherever you're at, okay? And then we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, well, what are some of the glaring errors potentially here? And then we'll get deeper into like, okay, well, what are your kind of like processes and procedures now to make sure the books are staying in line? Are you reconciling your bank accounts? Because if you're not, I highly doubt your financials are very accurate. Are you reconciling that credit card that you opened, or those 3 credit cards you opened, or whatever it might have been?
Business owners do that.
Yeah, crazy. And, are we, where are we at? And then after we kind of get some kind of semblance of handle on like, okay, what condition are the books in? And then it's like, okay, well, hopefully you're filing tax returns. No judgment if not. Probably should get that caught up though. But we look at, who's been doing it in the past. Okay, well, is the prior preparer, are they doing a good job? Are they giving you all the advantages that I think you might be eligible for? That's really the next step, is tax compliance. So really, foundation is we got to have good books. Step 2 is, basic compliance. We got to do a tax return. Step 3 would be like, okay, well, let's think about some proactive tax planning, now that hopefully we have good books in order, and see what we can do there and develop a strategy. And then step 4 is really, let's talk ongoing and see, like we referenced earlier, let's do some projections. Let's evaluate if that debt makes sense, if that new employee makes sense, if that new piece of equipment makes sense. Let's look at all those things holistically. And that's really the sweet spot, is when somebody gets, to that higher tier where it's like, okay, understand where the business is at. Now I can proactively ask legitimate questions to see if things make sense, and not just kind of shooting from the hip. Like, I think we can afford that new excavator. Yeah, sure, let's try it. It's like, oh, that was a $300,000 piece of equipment. It's like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. So I love how you broke that down into 4 steps. So step 1, let's kind of talk about that. If you don't know and you have QuickBooks, you could go run a report, P&L, balance sheet, and you could probably just literally run it January 1 to today in both those. Yeah. And if it's a mess, it's a mess.
It really doesn't tell you a lot.
Yeah. And if it doesn't tell you what you think, if it doesn't paint the position of your business right now, and if you look at it and go, this is just a bunch of numbers on a page. It's time, yes, go to step 2.
Right. Yeah. So kind of step 1 is like, but ask yourself, some basic questions to even try to figure out if the books are in decent order. It's like, okay, again, have we reconciled the bank account and the credit cards and all those things? Okay. If I have debt, does it even reflect the actual amount that, the bank says I owe? Yeah. I mean, that sounds crazy, but, it doesn't always. We've got this and that coded to the wrong spot, and it just can be a mess. And, asking yourself basic questions again, is it reconciled? Do like even the basic accounts that fundamentally most people can understand, like, does that even tie back to something in the realm of normalcy? Yeah.
Does a gut check.
If I have assets on the if I'm looking at a balance sheet and somehow an asset is like deeply negative, I mean, I see that. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. It's not an asset if it's negative, it's just, and that kind of thing happens. And so, those are just some leading indicators that's like, this probably isn't in great order right now. Yeah.
And Drew and I talk about it all the time when it comes to return on your investment as well. And if you don't have those numbers in place, you don't see where money is being spent, then how can you really tell this investment in marketing or this investment in a certain area is really getting a return if you don't have some of those like items right in place? And so just the clarity once again on getting those numbers right, understanding where you are, a snapshot of your business, seeing where your true investments are, your true costs are, and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And it might be something that, I mean, like you said, you have clients that meet monthly, it sounds like.
Yeah, kind of runs the gamut. But yeah, there are some on just about that frequency.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just getting a snapshot of the
business.
But
a lot of this goes back to just like big picture stuff, right? Like if you run your numbers and you've got it all, if you have a third for labor, then a third for bills and expenses, and then a third for profit, you've got a good, healthy business. Yeah. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can't look at this stuff and kind of see that and know that, okay, I'm at that third. That's great. I got a good, healthy business. If I spend 10% on the top line right now on marketing, what do I gain? Do I gain, is that break even? So I do all the marketing, I get more clients, but I spend all the money on marketing, or do I double my money?
Yeah.
You can't ask those questions and scale your business and do those. Oh, what if I add another X person or a piece of equipment or to speed things up or this or that? If you can't do that, you are literally just, you're putting yourself behind the ball. And, and even if you're one of the ones that you're like, well, I'm not a third. Well, you're never going to get there if you don't start getting it dialed in.
In the first few years, you're probably not going to be a third. Yeah. That would be pretty crazy if you are. But
well, it really depends on the business. Like I'll reference, a CPA firm. A third is a great assumption and a place to try to be. If I'm decided that I'm going to be like an Amazon retailer and sell widgets or something like that, well, that's probably really unrealistic. A third of your gross income is going to come to the bottom line as profit. I'm working on probably pretty thin margins. But if I if I do enough volume, I might make a decent amount of money.
But your labor's probably way less, right?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Everybody's a little different. But I think for a lot of trades and that kind of thing, a third is a good aspiration, to meet. So,
yep. And when I look at that, I just, and whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like, you got to get there and you got to put the pieces in place. And if you don't know, if you don't have the data, you can't do the thing, right? And it's like, as a good business owner and as a leader, leader of your household, leader of the business, leader of your employees, just like all the other things we've talked about on this podcast, you owe it to yourself to do this if you really want to take those steps and do that. Because I think to kind of pivot a little bit, we've talked about when to use a CPA and why to use a CPA. And what's probably a good CPA being the glue. Mm-hmm. And then we've kind of talked about the numbers and kind of figuring out, like, do I need it or do I not? Mm-hmm. We've talked about that. Well, I think the next step is when you start having money and you start doing that, what are you doing with the money? Because if you just leave it in the bank and let inflation hit, that's probably not the best choice. Where do you invest it? What do you do? What do you buy? What stocks do you do? And I think, a lot of good CPA firms have connections to make that happen and to do wealth planning and things along those lines too. And I think that's the next tier. As you progress as a business owner, it's survival, get organized, figure it out and scale, get that dialed. And then once you do that, what's my plan for my life and my family? And how do I make this a long-term situation from that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's truly the rare air that not everybody reaches. I'll caution people on one thing first, I guess, is I see a lot of people that they become relatively successful, and they're able to take a decent amount of money to the bottom line. That might be different for everybody. $100,000 to the bottom line might feel like a fortune to somebody. $1 million might feel like a fortune. It just depends on the person and their aspirations. But I see a lot of people, they kind of let that lifestyle creep thing happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like you see them pull up in the Escalade now, where they were driving an old pickup before, or, they bought that bigger house. And I'm not saying people can't do that. But I would encourage people that, like, okay, once I start turning a profit and I start feeling better about things, it's like, well, assess what your personal aspirations are and would have been a year ago and that kind of thing. Don't just continually increase them, because what we want to do is get to the point it's like, okay, well, the business shows a nice profit. And now I actually have kind of an excess of cash, like you're saying, Drew. Yeah. Like, I've got an excess of cash, and now I can invest that money and make my money multiply beyond just the business itself.
Yes. We've talked about that in a few different conversations we've had. Like, for me, example, when I got into real estate, I started making more money than I've ever made in my life. Immediately, I bought a house that I loved, a dream house kind of thing, and the car that I wanted. And not only were those probably not the best decisions, but I found that they truly didn't satisfy me the way I thought they would either.
Yeah.
And these are the conversations that I love, because what you're talking about is, how are you building something that's going to leave an impact, that's going to have legacy behind it? Right. How are you building something not in some sort of vehicle that's going to lose value and it's going to move on from it, that you're going to forget? It's like, how am I going to set up my family, even now with young kids, to have an impact in their life or have a legacy beyond what I can do or what this little device or whatever is going to look like. Mm-hmm. And those are the conversations we love to have. And so these are these next level conversations when you're running a business. Obviously, the same thing is true. You see businesses start to make expenses that probably they should scale to a little slower or find the right rhythms. But in our lifestyle, it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that a lot. Especially because we're all guilty of it. I mean, it's just kind of our society. We kind of, you're always push the ads for the latest, greatest thing, and you kind of want it. And you're like, I got money in the bank to do that.
Yeah.
And that's great. But, something to contemplate is like, what really gives me peace of mind? Having paid off all that debt in the company or personally or something like that? Or the fact I could put that down payment on the house and get, exactly what I've always dreamed of. That's great. And I totally get it. But it's like, maybe you just push that goal out there just a little further and say, what if I pay down the debt in the business first or something?
And we're in a society that you literally can get anything at your fingertips, like instantly. Mm-hmm. And it's so countercultural and counterintuitive in our minds to say, I'm going to wait on this. But there's something when you work toward it and earn it over time. And instead of just buying it now and dealing with it later, doing the opposite, it makes it more valuable to you in general as well.
Mm-hmm. And like in business, to me, like I am super, and you've watched this over the years, like foot on the gas, go. Like how big can we grow? What can we do? Stuff like that. But I know like as I've aged, it's one of those things that it's like, to not have the stress of a $30,000 a month payment on my business or $150,000 a month payment in the business or whatever that looks like, or $500,000 payment in the business,
or your payroll weekly of
of 600, 800,000. Yeah. To some of that you can't control, right? Like that's just part of the cost of doing business, but the debt side doing that. One thing that I feel like is as you grow these businesses, grow the businesses, do the thing, but try to responsibly put the money back and try to responsibly take it where at the end of the day, if you don't have the stress of it because you've spent extra on that, or you've bought a rental property, or you've put money in your savings account, or you've been selfish and taking it out of the business, but I've got a great nest egg for myself, I'm kind of okay with that. As long as you're doing something, you're putting it in stocks, you're putting it in properties, you're putting it in something that you're growing net worth. So in a lot of businesses, and this may not be the greatest thing to say, but like you said, an Amazon thing, there's tons of people that hit it hard and fast. They make a pile of money with XYZ product, and it's not a long-term thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I've watched a lot of people, we've sold flowers here, and then we sold widgets here, and then we sold car parts there, and we sold it, and they made they figured out the system, and then they have a niche, and then they make a bunch of money on it, and they use Salesforce, or not Salesforce, but Shopify, and they build accounts, and they sell on Amazon, and like that's all great, but like it's not always there. And I think when you go, and I think to your point, like, oh, I made $600,000 this year selling this widget. Well, yeah. And next year, a fidget spinner might not be the greatest thing that people want this year, right? Like you made that. If you would have just taken that, put it in savings, multiply it out. If you're 35 years old and you put $400,000 in savings, that's $2 million by the time you retire. You just fixed your 65 and older, 63 and older part of your life. Like you're done. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I look at things. Like, how do you chunk off? Like, okay, if I have this much money in retirement and I could pull this out of my business, pay myself, eat the taxes, it is what it is, get it over retirement, use a CPA to try to make the best choice. I'm not giving financial advice, but if you can do that and kind of strategize that, I think that's a really good way for me personally, looking at my life, what I've done, how to do some of that type of stuff versus going and buying and then getting yourself potentially in a bind when you have a business peak and fall. Everything ebbs and flows. Like not every business has a great year every year. And the ones that last 10, 20, 30 years, they get their debt under control, where if they have a bad year, it is what it is. Like next year will be great.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll never say that you can't take the profits out of the company, especially to a certain extent. You've earned that. But, if I did, like, do I have liquidity in my personal life?
Yeah.
Right? Or did I just spend it all, essentially? Because there's a lot of peace of mind that,
a bass boat, a new truck, and all the gear, that's not what it's for. That's not what it's for.
That's not going to get you too far, probably. Yep. And so, because we always want to assume that, okay, everything's up and to the right, so to speak, like getting bigger, better, profits growing, gross revenues growing, all that stuff's happening. But we see hiccups. Real estate's pretty volatile that you guys are in. Like, can you imagine if interest rates, on a 30-year mortgage went down a couple percent? You'd probably be gangbusters, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Conversely, we've seen just the opposite over the last.
This year's been one of the most difficult years in real estate history. And so within the last 60 years, and so
and so we just can't always forecast those things, even if things are going great now. Don't let that lifestyle creep get too great to where it's like, oh man, I've got no backup. I just thought
now I'm in a bind. Now I'm selling everything I own for a loss, and I'm
Yeah, exactly.
Man, that's super good advice. For me, what it sounds like, the CPA term almost sounds like a bad word. I think you should be a wealth and business coach.
They are.
Peace of mind coach.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like we talked about early on, like that's kind of the, it's not a misconception to think a CPA just does taxes, because there are those, but truly a good CPA can do a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, I just do taxes all day long. And I'm not even trying to disparage that. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's
but for a lot of small business owners, they do need more than just the taxes done. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What is one myth you wish people would stop believing?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's any one myth. It's a lot of myths, and they come from TikTok and Instagram and Facebook.
You mean that's not where you get your tax training from?
I would say most of those people producing videos on there are, it's like there's a grain of truth in most of them, but it's only a grain.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they've stretched whatever little bit of truth is in there to like the absolute infinite edge to where it's like, well, that's great that you think
Here's
that.
my Ferrari. It was free.
Yeah,
it's a write-off.
I wrote it all off.
Man, I want to get a G-Wagon because of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's a great one there. It's like, oh, yeah, the gross weight on a G-Wagon makes it eligible to entirely, bonus depreciated. And it's like, what business purpose did that G-Wagon have? I'm confused. Basically, what I'm getting at is like, yeah, okay, IRS audits are pretty sporadic. I don't like to advise people on that, but you can get away with a lot of stuff. That's just the reality, or some people can.
Until it comes.
And
it's all good till it's not.
Unless and again, they're pretty sporadic, audits are, but, under audit, it's like, that's not going to hold up. So, say that G-Wagon costs 200 some odd thousand. It's like, well, first of all, they're going to take away the deduction. You're going to owe tax at whatever rate you were eligible to owe taxes on that. You're going to have significant penalty and interest on it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to add up to a lot that you might not have. And so, people need to be careful of that. Putting their kids on payroll. It's like, you got a 4-year-old on payroll.
Wait, we can't do that.
It's like, what do they do for the company? It sounds
they were in a
good.
video once.
Yeah, I put them in a video once. You paid them $100,000. It's like, it's crazy. So just, people take that little grain of truth and they'll absolutely just stretch it to the infinite edge of whatever they think is, appropriate.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's not appropriate. So I just caution people like, man, when you see that video, hopefully you've got a good CPA to bounce. It's not that you can't bounce the idea off somebody.
Yeah,
that's fine.
The name of the game is to maximize expense and minimize life.
But just don't be surprised when I tell you either it's not legal, it's a bad idea, or we can do it, but in like a way scaled down version of whatever you thought was applicable to,
I think a lot of it comes back to what you were talking about with just lifestyle in general. It's like, what's the real purpose behind this? Yeah. And if it's got a real benefit to your business, there's probably a route to do it if it makes sense. But if it's us trying to fit our lifestyle or fit whatever we're trying to do into this to make it work.
Yeah, it's probably a good lens. You're probably right. That's a good way to say that.
To make it happen. So.
Yeah. Treat your business as one little piece of advice is just treat your business as its own separate living being.
We say that a lot.
We do say that a lot.
Yeah. Don't start conflating your own personal lifestyle with the business. Do for the business what's best for the business. Yeah. And leave yourself out of it. Hopefully you get compensated out of it, but don't conflate the two. Because even if you're we see this all the time, and I want to maximize deductions too, but don't start putting every Amazon purchase as supplies in the business. That sounds great, but the reality is you just start ordering more on Amazon because you think it's a tax write-off. It may or may not be. I'm not going to get into that. But all of a sudden, you don't really know if you're profitable or not, right? You've
back to the basics,
you've
man.
Ran so much junk through the business that it's like, I guess I'm breaking about even. It's like, no, man, you ran $70,000 of basically junk. Personal expenses through the company. The business is actually making money. You just can't see it because you've intertwined your personal life into it.
And what we've seen, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole very far, but At some point, you sell your business a lot of times.
Right.
And then you've done that. And then you're going, and we've bought businesses where they're like, oh, yeah, but, look at my books. It's like, I'm not buying your books based off that. I'm buying your books based off EBITDA and blah, 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 or what it's worth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like, when you do that, you're also hurting yourself at some point too.
Right.
If you ever do that. So,
right. All of a sudden you don't look that profitable, where it's like, well, I think, I'm kind of profitable, right? But it's like, nah, your books don't show you are.
Your books don't show you are.
Adam, you've worked with people the whole scale, from starting their business to multi-million-dollar companies.
Yeah.
When you see people that have been successful with building their business, one thing we've talked about is building the team around you. What kind of circle have you seen around these people? What are some of the common denominators that you found of the people that have been able to, even against the odds, build their business? Sounds like you've said a few things, making sure lifestyle is in check, making sure that you have the right team. But what are some of those common denominators that you've seen?
Yeah, I think, Stefan, I don't know if it's you or Drew, somebody referenced it earlier, like thinking about like even like generational wealth or something like that. And that gets you in a mindset that I'm not building for today. I'm not building for the next house I want to buy or the boat or whatever. I'm not building for any of those things. I'm creating true wealth that, may even get passed on to my kids or my grandkids or something like that. And now all of a sudden, I've taken my time horizon and not made it 6 months from now. I've made it 30 years from now or something like that. And I think that gives a lot of people a mindset that it's like, okay, I'm thinking long term now. I'm not just thinking about how to make a quick buck. I'm trying to think about how to truly build wealth. And that's what I see from the most successful people, is it's their decision making. Inherently in business, you do make some decisions that impact tomorrow, but everything I do is for a long-term purpose, not a quick buck tomorrow.
Yeah, that's a really good advice.
It is cool. It is cool.
We see it a lot. I mean, I feel like in real estate, it's one of the lower barrier of entry. And so in TikTok, everybody's the same thing. It's like, here's how you make a quick buck here or there doing that. And with us,
sell a house, buy a Gucci purse.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's something we face with our agents, with the industry around us. And that's what I really appreciate about Drew, is he helps us to stay focused on the bigger picture. And when you're going to have challenges, the expenses that pop up, things that it's going to hurt your bottom line. And if you're so focused on that right in front of you, you're going to miss out on the bigger picture. So,
right. In real estate, it's like, well, maybe I don't just, buy that Gucci purse. Maybe I took that and added it to next year's marketing budget or something like that. So instead of selling 2 houses, I sold 3. I don't know, but that's the idea.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation.
Well, Adam, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, great question. So you can go to adifferentcpa.com. That's our website. I'd probably just direct most people there. You can find my bio on there. There's a, info at Different CPA, to where you can send us a message, and we're happy to talk to anybody. Not every relationship works, but most of them do. And
and you guys work with people all over the country. I mean, that's not really a barrier these days with Zoom and everything like that. It's not hard to have clients.
We've got clients in Texas, Illinois, Oklahoma, Arkansas. I mean, just however it happens to be somewhat regional, but for the most part, we'll work with clients anywhere and everywhere. It just so happens that word of mouth tends to get you regional. But yeah.
Man, thank you so much. Well, thank you for joining us at the Founders Table once again. Great conversation. I really do. I love having guests like you on, because I feel like it's just a glimpse into the scene that we can see the larger picture. And sometimes when we're in business, we see the expenses, we see the employees we got to pay, all the things that stress us out, and we've got all the hats to wear. And it's so important to have the right people, the right conversations around you. So thank you. We will see you next week on the Founders Table.